Hey guys, welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds. I'm Ted, and today I'm hanging out with
Nerdarchy Dave.
And today our weapons get exotic. Hey guys, jump down to the description below where you can sign up for Nerdarchy, the newsletter. It's a great way to get RPG tips as well as learn how to game with us.
Dungeons and Dragons weapons. There's a ton of them from 3rd edition that did not make it into the new, into the 5th. Also, these also like compress some things. Like I feel like as far as pole arms go, in 5e they're kind of like, well, you can use these ones and call it whatever.
Right, and in ages past, you had a list of like 12 different types of pole arms and the types of damage that they did, and it was utterly crazy.
Also, they took the longsword and basically said, well, they added the versatile property to a lot of weapons where you can wield it one-handed or two-handed. It changes the amount of damage it does. And the longsword's a perfect example of, they're like, well, you don't need a bastard sword because, you know, you have a longsword.
The bastard sword is considered a hand and a half. You can use it one-handed or two. It's your call. Well, they just said, okay, well, I'll do it with a longsword.
Well, historically, isn't that the way it was anyway? There wasn't really a bastard sword.
The historical, now I'm correct me if I'm wrong here, but
oh, don't worry, they will.
the history of weapons are very crazy and diverse from what is listed in the player's handbook. Longsword was something that was thrown around, and people viewed it differently. Nothing was ever called a short sword, but yet it has always been in D&D for as long as I've played. So it's however you want it. You can make a one-handed blade and call it a longsword. Other people might want to call it this, want to call it that, but traditionally you can make a handle that you could easily put two hands on, and many people still call that a longsword.
Well, yeah, you've done German longsword fighting, so
yeah, and I fight with a longsword, and it's designed, for one or two hands.
I'm actually more interested in talking about the more fantastical weapons because I really don't care about real world weapons in my D&D game.
That's so true.
That much, I think more like comic books and movies and novels, and how does it look in my mind when I'm playing the game?
When you're thinking axe, you're thinking axe, something that's gonna, be massive as opposed to the axe.
Yeah, that's a hand axe. But no, it depends on how you're wielding it as well, one-handed or two-handed, and how over the Conan top you want to go with it. That being said, there was a bunch of weapons in 3rd edition that some of them, I think you're more likely to hurt yourself with. Like the dire flail.
No, the dire flail, that's the double flail, right?
Yes.
Like I given the 3rd edition mechanics, I really think that there should have been a specific thing for just that. Like it takes 2 proficiency slots to be able to use it, because I can't think of how you would do that without hurting yourself.
Yeah, the dire flail is kind of a crazy one, but visually it looked cool. And the idea of someone being able to twirl that thing around is kind of cool. And I'm playing a game, so I really don't care that much. So there's that one. But then there was a couple others. There was the double sword and the double axe. Both of them, I could see those actually working. The double axe, you'd have to be really strong, though, I think.
I think given the size of the axe blades that they pictorially represented that with, yeah, I agree. There should have been a massive strength requirement on that one. The double sword is kind of just like, all right, instead of hitting somebody with blunt end of a staff, you're just using the sword, and it's a matter of doing it with precision as opposed to just smack. So I don't see any issues with that one.
Yeah, it's probably not a really highly optimized weapon. Because of where the hand placement has to be and things like that would make it weird. But, you could see it working for a game. It'd be fun. It's fine.
You saw it with Darth Maul.
Yeah, but the difference is lightsabers are energy weapons and they don't weigh anything.
That's true.
So you don't have to use leverage.
And you don't have to have precision because there's not a fine cutting edge. It's anything. So
yeah, just touching it just burns right through. So
the most, the second most ridiculous one I thought was the Dwarven Urgosh.
Yeah, so the Dwarven Urgosh is like an amalgamation of all the Dwarven weapons. Pretty much, their favorite ones, hammer, axe, And you have a spear
on both sides.
Yeah, on either end of it. So whether I need this chop, stab, or smash, your bases are covered.
Indeed.
I actually like that weapon. I thought it'd be kind of a cool weapon for a dwarven paladin.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, for some cases, they've had pole arms in earlier editions that are similar to that. They just didn't have the spike end on the other side.
Yeah, well, I believe that they were all probably historical as well. So coming from the earlier editions, and then the dwarven war axe was like the dwarf version of the bastard sword. They didn't want to be left out. And then one of the few things we actually do get in 5th edition is spiked armor and the helmet spike, but it's in the Sword Coast Adventures guide.
And I doubt the spiked helm in the Skag is going to be the spiked helm of Thibbledorf. It's like 3 foot long, and he just charges.
Well, I think it does a die 6, so I mean, it's still a decent amount of damage for you ramming somebody with your head. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend that fighting style, but
Yeah.
It's like the Curly of the Three Stooges fighting style, essentially. Put the spiked helm on you. So also we mentioned the Orcish double axe, which was kind of cool. In one of the other books, they had the Orcish shot put. So
wasn't that like a 10-pound like?
It was basically like a big rock that they turned into, basically a metal shod ball of iron that they would use to throw at their enemies. Yeah, which is kind of humorous. All right, so I'm not overly sad to see that one not resurface.
Now we didn't talk about the spiked chain, and thematically it's really cool. You see chain fighters throughout numerous different pop culture references and this and that. I don't honestly know how effective chains would be, and whether I would want to be holding on and using a weapon that's barbed or going to spike me as well.
No, chains are an effective weapon. The chains themselves is not a problem. It's just when you start adding blades to it that makes it more challenging to use, because there is a bunch of Chinese weapons that are chained weapons that they would use.
Okay.
And also, oh man, what was it in Kill Bill? The girl that uses I don't know if they call it a meteor hammer or something like that. I forget off the top. You guys remind me, which is really cool as well. So that actually does work. Repeating crossbow is an actual thing. It hasn't resurfaced yet. I'm sure that's easy enough to add. Hey, you're running a game. Your character wants to spend more money. They can get a crossbow that has cartridges that holds 5 bolts in it before they have to actually use the load property.
And that's useful for anyone that is looking to. All right, I want to flavor my character with a crossbow, and there's not all that much advantage to using a crossbow over a longbow. So it's like, well, why not?
And I think that leaves one more, and I have to blame Marvel and Wolverine for this one.
The bladed gauntlets.
The bladed gauntlets, and in 3rd edition, right? So different weapons would have different threat ranges. They would cause, or it was called a threat range, and that was what they would crit on. And there was several weapons that were pretty disgusting. Scimitars and bladed gauntlets happened to be some of those weapons.
20.
Yeah, and then you would build your character around getting bonuses to crit. So it got so ridiculous. On an 11 or better, I think you could crit depending on
I don't remember
stacking everything.
I don't remember the exact build, but I do know that I had one that was a character that crit on a 12+. So 45% of the time he could crit.
And in 3rd edition, you doubled your bonuses as well. Where in 5th edition, it wouldn't be a big deal because you'd be like, oh, you do 2d6 when you hit. There's other ways to add stuff in. Like if you're a paladin spite, it would hurt a lot. So. So I would like to see some of this stuff come back, but the question is, how do you add them back into your game and not have it be pointless, right? So or the other problem is,
I mean, you can't add swords and have them be pointless because then they're not effective weapons.
That's true. Good point. Practice weapons.
So,
yeah, that's my point. It makes it really hard for adding in previous edition weapons and new weapons is because it comes down to the properties and how do you want to make the properties meaningful. Like you can give weapons reach, but it really doesn't mean nearly as much as it used to, and there's only a couple weapons that have it. Heavy property is more of a restriction than a benefit. And, versatile is another one where, okay, you can use it one-handed or two-handed, and it changes its effectiveness.
So, you've got whether a finesse weapon. I don't think any of these guys are really gonna fall into that particular category.
A spike chain, maybe. I'd probably go with spike chain, but that's just me. Yeah, most of these are really, most of the double weapons really require a lot of strength to wield, except for the spike chain and maybe the double-bladed sword. Everything else is like, you have to be strong. They should have a requirement.
Yeah, I was actually gonna go there and say, like, all right, let's add a new property and have it be that it requires a strength mod of a certain number.
Yeah, kind of similar to the armor class the way it goes. And then you have to come up with how to offset that. Like, does that mean higher damage die? Or something along those lines. I feel like the double weapon property could be added in, or is it that you have to add the light property to it so that it can be used as a two weapon fighting with two weapon fights as a bonus action?
Well, I mean, you could have that the double weapon property, qualifies that as you're using it two-handed, so you can use your offhand to do that. So
do you do that, or do you go, oh well, this weapon actually to use this weapon until its fullest actually requires you to take the dual weapon wielder feat? It would be the other end, because that's really, that feat lets you have the ability to use weapons that aren't the light property and to use two of them at the same time. So that's the other route you could go. So when using this weapon, it could qualify as two weapons, I guess. Like, I don't know how I'd have to figure out how to word it, but it qualifies as two weapons, or it requires the feat. I don't know. Like, that would be a weird mechanic, and because in 5th edition feats are optional. We always talk about them as if like they're part of the game, but they're an optional part of the game.
Right.
So when you add in something like that, you kind of have to think about how does it interact with the rest of the rule set. Yeah. And does it make it and my concern is, does it make the double weapons like kind of too good? If there's nothing else to them other than, hey, pick it up. Now you're kind of getting around the limitations that have been put on two weapon fighting.
Well, they previously did have the requirement of they were exotic weapons. You needed to be proficient in them. I don't see an issue with saying, oh, you need to have dual wielder to use them effectively.
Well, that's true. Or, you create the exotic weapon proficiency, and then you get into homegrown, right? So you have to create exotic weapon proficiency, and the only person I would actually probably give exotic weapon proficiency to is the fighter. Like, everybody else would have to take it somehow.
Right.
Or do you only give it to certain fighters? Like, like the Battle Master and the Champion.
Well, I mean, then it's a situation of, well, do I really have to wait to 3rd level to play this type of character?
Well, yeah, that's exactly
it's, or like, all right, you take the feat that allows you to do it at first. There's lots of speculation.
So, curious, what are you guys doing in your Dungeons and Dragons 5e game? Are you adding back weapons from previous editions? Are you making up your own? How have you gone about it? Let us know in the comments below. While you're at it, like, share, and subscribe.
You can tweet at us at Nerdarchy.
So until next time,
stay nerdy. Wrong here, but
don't worry, they will.
the history of weapons are very crazy and diverse from what is listed in the player's handbook. Longsword was something that was thrown around, and people viewed it differently. Nothing was ever called a short sword, but yet it is.
A ton of them from 3rd edition that did not make it into the into the 5th. Also, there's also like compressed some things. Like, I feel like as far as pole arms go, in 5e they're kind of like, well, you can use these ones and call it whatever.
Right, and in ages past, you had a list of like 12 different. Hey guys, welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds. I'm Ted, and today I'm hanging out with
Nerdarchy Dave.
And today our weapons get exotic. Hey guys, jump down to the description below where you can sign up for Nerdarchy, the newsletter. It's a great way to get RPG tips as well as learn how to game with us.
Dungeons and Dragons weapons, there's a sword because you have a longsword.
The bastard sword is considered a hand and a half. You can use it one-handed or two. It's your call. Well, they just said, okay, well, do it with a longsword.
Well, historically isn't that the way it was anyway? There wasn't really a bastard sword.
The historical. Now, correct me if I'm types of pole arms and the types of damage that they did, and it was utterly crazy.
Also, they took the longsword and basically said, well, they added the versatile property to a lot of weapons where you can wield a one-handed or two-handed. It changes the amount of damage it does. And the longsword's a perfect example of, they're like, well, you don't need a bastard